Hello, you're listening to the Neil Lamptey Show. This week I am joined by Imogen.
Hello, Jerry.
By Neil.
Hello.
By Dom.
Hello there.
It's a dream team. Let's go for moments of the week. I'm going to talk slowly like I normally do to give you that extra crucial few seconds so that you can think of something. But I think, Neil, you've probably got one.
Oh, it's so non-specific, though. It's just being away, Joey. I've never been...
World class.
Never been. I haven't been at an away game for a very long time. Very, very long time. And I went to Millwall, and it was everything and more. It was a very, very lovely day, which is weird to say because I was scared about being bludgeoned for most of the week. But that didn't happen in the end. I just had a good time.
How close did you come to a run-in with your friend Stanley?
Didn't happen.
Not at all,
Or
no?
at least I wasn't aware of it. So
Fair dues. So
Did you
just
see how I
lovely
played along with that joke, even though I had no idea what you're going on about?
That's absolutely fine. Don't worry about it. You're not as street as I am. I don't think.
Oh, I don't know. You didn't see me in Millwall, mate. I was strutting.
So it was just overall it was just a lovely day then, yeah.
It was way more lovely than I expected. I think it's because we basically circumvented the entirety of London to make sure we got there in a safe manner. But I mean, it was just just different. I was expecting to be terrified for most of it, and no, we had a few drinks, we had a good time, we watched our team be pretty decent, we also sung some songs, and yeah, it's what a trip to London should be about.
Oh, fantastic! Right, Dom. So Peterborough preview, and then we're done. Dom, what was your moment of the week?
I'm going to go back to the Cardiff game, and there was a couple moments of this, but the one I'm going to talk about is one that happened like close to where I was sitting, of just Victor Gyökeres just absolutely murdering Cardiff centre backs. It was just like he's just so good, and there is sort of reminiscences. I know there's sort of completely different players in a sense, but it's a little bit like Callum Wilson, where he can make bad balls good just by being so persistent and also really skillful and quick. And it was actually quite poignant too. Who was actually roasting? He was roasting Aidan Flint, who, if anyone remembers the first game at Sixfields, he was lined up for Bristol City and got absolutely terrorised by Callum Wilson in that game. I remember that game actively celebrating whenever Flint got on the ball because I just knew that Wilson would be on him and nicking it off him. But yeah, it was close to that levels. It's a bit annoying that a couple of those moments didn't really pay off with a goal, but they were absolutely just exhilarating, and it's just amazing just to watch a player seemingly realise that he's absolutely bloody brilliant.
Yeah,
That's the key, isn't it? Realising it. That, like, same as Callum Wilson, realising I'm actually really good here. We're saying the same about Gyökeres, when last season you kind of had a little look at him and thought, okay, you might have something. That Stoke goal, thought, oh, you've got something about you, but you weren't too sure. And this year it's just, yeah, he's shooting when he shouldn't be shooting. He's taking people on, and he never gives the ball away. Very, very good.
We're going to come on to the Millwall game, obviously, but the goal that he scores against Millwall, you score it, and then you think, is it that easy? Like, could everyone do that? He just sort of brought it down, just got, but even though there were players about, just found a bit of space and just sort of rolled it in. You just think, why doesn't everyone do that?
I know.
It didn't look hard, did it? Yeah, I mean, the guy is fabulous. It's amazing that the two hottest takes of the summer were, let's not sign Ben Sheaf, even though we have to, and £1 million is probably a lot for Gyökeres. Both of them.
It's very familiar, Joey. Did you have
world class opinions to out. Imogen, moment of the week.
Well, mine is very similar, almost identical to Neil's, because on Saturday morning, I will admit to being tired and emotional. I've got noisy neighbours, guys, and it's not suiting me well. I am getting very little sleep, and I am too old to survive on 3 hours. So up I rocked to the den. My poor friend, Rob, had to suffer me being very tired and emotional, a little bit teary. And we got to the ground, and I regained perspective, and it must have been, I don't know, about maybe 25 minutes in, and everyone in our stand was singing, and it felt like I was about to go to war. And guys, it was the best thing that I've had. It was so incredible to be back properly with the fans. And I know we've talked about this a lot, and this is a theme of this season, but I don't think there is anything that can replace that feeling when you have 2,000 very drunk men standing next to you singing. It's a very invigorating feeling.
When you said tired and emotional, I assumed
Yeah.
you were talking about it in the sort of private eye sense. So it's quite disappointing that you meant literally.
Oh, no. Yeah, literally.
Fair play.
I'm over it now, guys. I know you're all worried, but I'm fine.
That's good. That's good. I'm going to dip slightly back into previous week ever so slightly. I can think of kind of a million different instances of coming up against Neil Warnock and Mick McCarthy and them being apoplectic on the sidelines, but while they were winning, just because that's their go-to. What's magnificent was that back to back, seeing them going mad whilst losing was very, very disorienting to happen one after the other, because you just think this is the absolute typical side that we don't perform against. Is the sort of when McCarthy took over at Cardiff last season, didn't we get absolutely rolled by him? Was it 3-0?
Yeah.
3-1.
They were good.
Yeah.
3-1, yeah, and you were like, wow, because they'd been awful, hadn't they? And then he took over, didn't really do. It wasn't like he made a load of signings or anything. He just got them organised, didn't he? And you kind of, it's another sort of odd thing about this season, along with the fact that you watch the games and you think, wow, we're a really high scoring team, but actually we're not. And do you know what I mean by that? It's a lot of kind of up is down, black is white about this season. But watching them to be furious about not being able to break us down was absolutely magnificent to see, like, right after each other. Once you might be able to put down to kind of one-off misfortune on their part, but that it's now probably too many games to not say we might be quite a good team, actually. But there we go. Right, we're gonna kind of. Cardiff feels like it was part of a different run of games, doesn't it? So we're not going to dwell.
Mate, before you do,
yes, go on.
I've got to interrupt. I suddenly have thought of a really good moment of the week, and it actually was my moment of the week because it made me laugh and also cry at the same time. I was at the match at the weekend, and bearing in mind just how rowdy and everything Millwall is, there was a lady to the left of us giving the Millwall fans like the wanker sign. And out of everybody, given how everybody is an absolute lunatic at that game, she was the one who the steward picked out to come and have a word with and tell her to come. It's like, are you absolutely serious? She's like not threatening at all, and not because she's a woman, but just because she literally was not threatening at all. She just joined in for a little bit like everybody else. And that was my moment of the week, thinking, my God, you are really picking on the wrong person here. There's some really nasty stuff being said here, and you go to the lady who's just joining in. Yeah, that makes me sound like a bigot, but I'm not. I find it funny because she's
well, no,
sweet.
I mean, simultaneously, that's funny and quite sinister, isn't it? Is that as a steward, that your boss would be like, go and tackle some of that behaviour, and be like, yeah, I'll tackle the bit that won't
really ruined her day as well. Like, she sat
hammered.
down for the rest of it, and I don't think she enjoyed herself. I was a bit sad for her.
But
But
that is a bit of a shame. Actually.
yeah, that I picked that out because it's like, why do that? No need for that.
Yeah. Well, brilliant to bring the tone down for this, Neil. What else?
Oh,
what else
I'm
were you
all about that, aren't I? Oh, God.
what else were you able to not enjoy?
Oh, that was it, really. That was the only thing I didn't enjoy because everything else kind of went in my favour. Like, I was able to talk in a Midlands accent on the train and not get beaten up, which I was warned would happen. I was relatively quiet, to be honest with you, but my mate was more loud than me, and we did all right. But no, we had a really good day. Generally, why am I talking about this when people want to hear about football? But it's part of the experience. Like, I had a really good day. Went to Millwall, had a few drinks, went to the ground. It didn't feel that threatening, to be honest, and was able to sit and watch it was just a good game of football. We didn't win, but I'm really comfortable with who we are right now. So that worked for us. I mean, the only bit that I wasn't entirely comfortable with was just when I saw the lineup, and there's a few things here. So he made 3 changes. So one was enforced with Kane. I had to bring him in, and then he switched Jamie Allen around, and he brought Godden in, and that's, in my mind, that's kind of football manager thinking, trying to keep your players happy, knowing that they're actually decent players, so you can play them. But the reality of it is sometimes it's not good to mess about with something that's working as well as it was working. And Allen and Waghorn were doing good jobs for the team, so I wasn't 100% on that as a switch, but it didn't concern me massively.
Didn't he say that Allen was injured-ish?
Ish was being the word, so I always think that's Robin's code for
I've dropped.
Yeah, I had a little look at him. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure he was injured but I don't know. I just feel like he likes to get people in when he gets any kind of opportunity to do that, and it's good that he's got that chance to do that, because let's face it, we've got Rose as backup. We've got some good players on the bench nowadays. It's a possibility. I don't know why I have a irrational dislike of Todd Kane already. I think it was because he was way too nervous and dysfunctional in that first game. But when he came up, we got no option. He's got to play there. But he's very much, in my mind, from what I've seen so far, he's very much a Dennis Irwin will be nice and normal on the fullback position and do nothing other than be normal. And you're not going to knock anybody for being normal, but when he's replacing Dabo, who is way more than normal, it's not quite my kind of guy. So that's why
he made me reflect on how effective Julian Da Costa is.
Oh God, they're levels, aren't they? There really are levels about. Yeah, he's just for somebody who was apparently so confident, doesn't strike me as somebody who's got the ability to be quite as confident as he is in himself. But he's only had one and a bit games really now, so I'm not going to judge him too harshly. But he's no Dabo, and I'm not seeing enough from him to make me want him to be there in the long term. Never mind. But in terms of this, the game, like I say, I'm comfortable with the team right now. I'm comfortable with who we are. I think we've got a real slickness about us, and that showed in the first half. Scoring so early on with Gyökeres, just when he took that ball in, you just sort of like, I know you're going to do something with this, which is very, very disconcerting for us to feel that confident in a player. But he is just riding that crest right now, and he's looking really, really good and really threatening. And what does him more than anything else is, so he's quick off the mark, he keeps the ball, but he's got such a sort of a sweet strike to him, and that makes all the difference. And the fact that he was able to put that ball away the other day when it wasn't the greatest of angles, but because he's got such a pure strike about him, it allows him to put the ball away. And he's just a really good target man, especially away from home as well. I think he gives us a lot of options when we're maybe under a little bit more stress than we would like to be. So we had a good start, and we're all going mad in the stands, thinking, right, here we go. This is another. This is Millwall from a few years back when Armstrong was scoring from the halfway line, so it was going to be that kind of game. But fair play to them, they caused us some grief as well. I thought they were pretty. I don't know what their levels are, but they seem to be pushing quite hard against us. They were trying to perform at a decent level, and they were finding some space against our defence. And I wasn't worried that I thought they were better than us, but I was worried that I thought that they had more than I was hoping or expecting from them, because I had this idea that Millwall, given that we smashed them last year, would be a similar kind of team. And actually they turned out to be a really kind of combative force against us, and they were putting lots of challenges in, and making us work for it, which was made for a really interesting game, but didn't make for a particularly easy game for us, which is fine. Beyond that, Gordon came in, and I don't still, even now, after however many years, 2 years being with us, I'm not entirely sure what special feature Gordon has. I guess he's a finisher. Beyond that, I'm not entirely sure what else he brings us, and he kind of showed that the other day, where he's really trying and he really works, and there was something missing, I thought, from his game to kind of link us up and do what we needed from our two strikers. I don't think he really brought anything or as much as I thought he was going to bring to the match. And not to say he wasn't trying, but I just don't think. I would have stuck with Waghorn. Whether he's tired or not, I don't know, but I would have stuck with Waghorn. I think that combo was working far more, and I just worry when you disrupt things by just bringing someone in for the sake of bringing someone in. Robbins would tell you that it wasn't that, but I think there was very much an element of trying to keep many people happy at the same time there. And I thought Godden came in and he was relatively ineffective, really. So just a really
Can I
garish point there.
jump in on that, because there's a specific thing that I wanted to flag that I don't know if anybody else thought or noticed, was in the first half, Gyökeres took a shot when arguably you could have passed to Godden in a better position, but I wasn't like, you know what I mean? It wasn't daft.
I remember that one. Yeah,
Godden went crazy at him.
He did.
Yeah,
that was on the highlights, wasn't it, as well?
And there was it, and then in the second half, he passes to Godden at a point where really the shot was the absolute number one choice. And I've been quite critical of Waghorn's performances, but dynamically speaking, it's hard not to argue that Waghorn was a foil for him and let him get on and be the number one guy, which at the minute you can't imagine really you want to have any blurring of that line. He is what we're doing at the moment, isn't it? And I think it's hard for Godden, because Godden isn't going to sit back and be like, well, I don't want to. He's, like you say, he's a finisher, isn't he? I can't see him sort of doing the dropping off work that Waghorn is comfortable doing, at least. I did, watching that game, the main thing that I came out of it thinking was, as much as I'd like to see Waghorn either be a bit better or do a bit more, he's certainly a better sort of dynamic component to that team than Godden was, off the basis of that one game, which obviously is, the first start he's made in ages or whatever. I didn't know, Imogen, if you'd got a view on that.
Yeah, actually, I'm quite interested that you both said that, because I thought I was pleasantly surprised by the work that Godden put in off the ball, and in feeding Gyökeres. Maybe because my expectations were so low, I thought, well, Godden was the main guy when he was fit, when he was scoring, when he was playing. Everything came through him, and I wondered how he would adjust to being very obviously second best. I thought he played much better. I agree that he didn't have the same maybe eye for distribution that Waghorn did with Gyökeres when he was playing there. But I didn't think he was that bad. I think Robin should have taken him off earlier, but I think Robin should have made a lot of subs earlier on. I don't know why he waited so long, because we clearly were lacking the energy that we had in previous games towards, 70-75 minutes, and he didn't change it. But I actually thought Godden was all right. I wouldn't say I would want him there long term if Gyökeres is still going to be the main man. I think Waghorn does give you that maybe a bigger supporting option. But Godden wasn't as bad as I thought he was going to be.
No, I think that's right. I mean, I don't want to say that he was bad as well. So it's not that he was bad. I just think that dynamically we've looked different with the other two up front. So, Godden came in, and it's a really difficult role for him, because we've started to enjoy the other two up front, and then you bring in somebody else and you just hope that they show you something different. And I guess there didn't seem to be much connection between them two, and I'm blaming him for that, because he's not Waghorn, which is an interesting one. But I just, yeah, I mean, like you say, I've no issues with Godwin's work off the ball. I think he does a good job, and I think he did all he could do in that match. But I think there's no accounting for accidentally falling into a dynamic that works for you. And I don't necessarily think we're in a position right now to mess about with that too much, where Robin's not saying he's messing about too much, but I think he maybe thinks he's got a luxury to do that sometimes when he doesn't necessarily have it. I would much prefer build up a really solid understanding between all of our players as much as we can, and build that up over the course of 3, 4, 5 games if we can. I know it doesn't happen very often, but that's how you get promoted in this league, by building that absolute solidity. And I don't know, obviously Kane was obvious. He says Sheaf was because Alan had a bit of a knock, and I think he brought Godin in purely to give Godin some time. But that's quite a shift in different areas, which then makes what was working. They have to reset a little bit. You can't. It's not quite a like for like. There's slightly different vibes going on all over the pitch, and I guess that's where I'm just greedy. I want to win every game. I see that all those stats tables where we're winning all the stats and we're a really good team, and then when we don't win, I find a reason, and my reason was we missed out on a few of the really good dynamics we had the other game.
I know we're sort of not done with Millwall, but I did want to ask Dom about, if you going into the game tomorrow, is who would you play? So think sort of midfield onwards. What would you go with as your kind of, if everyone's fit tomorrow?
Okay, so I think the most interesting area of potential team selection tomorrow is probably midfield. From sounds of things, Fankati Dabo is still suspended, so Todd Kane's going to be a right wing back. Sounds like Jake Clark-Salter is going to miss this game through injury, so Michael Rose comes in, possibly leaves our defence a little bit slow against some quick Peterborough players. But I wonder, just for the dynamic of the game, given that it is going to be one where we're probably going to see quite a lot of the ball, whether Ben Sheaf is the better person for the specific job, whereas Jamie Allen did a really good job against Cardiff and Middlesbrough, just sort of breaking up play and getting it forward a little bit quickly. And I think Sheaf, from what I've seen this season against Reading and Nottingham Forest, where those games they had long periods where we were seeing a lot of the ball, and Sheaf was helping us move it with the fair amount of purpose. And you got Hammer as well, who's a good user of ball there. I think that possibly works best. And then further forwards, O'Hare got taken off against Millwall. A few questions about his form, but it's hard to see him getting dropped anytime soon. I think he'd have to be especially ineffective for quite a prolonged period, consider changing anything up there. And as for the striker, I probably would go with Wagon. I think, as Jerry says, he acts as quite a good foil. I thought, especially against Cardiff, there were just some really nice quick touches from Wagon when we were breaking quickly, which opened the play up quite nicely. And I think that's working quite well. And there's a good understanding and attack between those two.
Is there any question for you, Dom, about whether you... And I think the thing with Waghorn is that there's almost a blurring of these lines. But is there a question for you about whether you have Victor up front on his own, and then what you have is two attacking midfielders rather than two strikers?
Yeah, I think Joe Harris certainly could be effective as a lone striker, and possibly is more effective as a lone striker. I think it's just the balance of the squad right now where we have an awful lot of strikers where if you're going to end up leaving one of like Godhorn, Waghorn or Walker out of the team entirely to play one up front. And also, who else do we really have as attacking midfielders? Bright sort of AWOL at the moment. Allen and Shipley can come in there, but it feels more of a downgrade in attacking threat compared to just playing one of our three other strikers.
I wonder whether you can get Sheaf and Harmer as the two kind of sitting midfielders, and then you put Allen next to O'Hare.
Yeah, I'm still not fully comfortable with Allen in that attacking midfield role. I thought he played a lot there last season. I think it was exposed quite a few times. We just didn't have that sort of quickness of touch in tight areas, whereas you just seem to be losing the ball just from being just a step or two slower in his speed of thought. And I think it works quite well for him playing slightly deeper, where he's got time and space to use the ball with.
True. Imogen, pick it up from there. What were your other recollections from Millwall?
I thought our back three looked very strong. I was very impressed with the way that they were covering, even if one inevitably made a mistake. That there was someone else was coming in a composed fashion. There was some cracking last-ditch tackles from McFadzean and from Hyam. I thought Hyam played really well.
Yeah, I did.
He just keeps getting better, which is fabulous news. And I felt really comfortable with them. But as Neil said, I think two of the biggest talking points around me certainly were the performances of Maatsen and of Kane. Kane first, I think I'm with Neil. I'm yet to fall for him. It's difficult to know whether it's just because he's been thrown in and he's not Dabo. I don't know. There's not much in him that excites me yet. I don't know whether his passing that is so wayward is because he's expecting his teammate to be in a different position, or whether he's just not very good. I don't know what the rest of you thought on him, but I'm not sold.
No, I guess
just
time will
need
tell.
to see
Yeah, go on, Neil.
something more. Like every player, you want to kind of see a little bit of not exceptional, but a specific attribute, and he's just he's like a version of Phil Neville on the right hand side, where he's just. I'm still trying to work him out what bit, and there is a lot of value in having somebody who's very sturdy and safe. But in the first sub appearances, he was pretty shaky and a little all over the place. And then against Millwall, he was just down the line, no real understanding of who he is, which for some formations work. But I just think when you're so reliant in our formation, and the reason why we work right now is that we have such rounded threat across the pitch, where you've got Maatsen able to interact with these strikers, and you've got the same with Dabo on the right hand side, and that entire kind of connection between O'Hare and Hammer and Dabo really, really works and really throws the opposition. And the same goes on the other side, where you've got Maatsen able to interact with O'Hare and just do those kind of innate touches which you don't expect a player to be able to do, but can just do. And then you've got Kane, who doesn't really have the pace. I don't think he's got the swiftness of feet or thought, and I think that's why I struggle with him. And I feel terrible just because he's new and I've already judged him, but I need to see more. I need to see a way that he will fit in, which doesn't balance the team and doesn't make us feel lopsided, because we've got somebody on the right hand side who isn't able to match kind of the swiftness that we get from the other side, or what we would ordinarily get from Dabo. So, yeah, that's the end of my Kane rant. But I just need to see more. I need to see more.
Just to underline it slightly, as I remember what my actual moment of the week is, which is that it's an incredible I follow moment, which was quite late in the second half. Hamer's got the ball pretty much on the edge of the opposition area and instinctively turns outward to the right to play the ball out to that area. And when he has to stop himself because Kane's not there. And you see him physically gesticulate towards that area as if to say, why is there no one there? And then he turns back inside and they're stood off him, so he's got quite a bit of time on the ball. And the camera goes with him. So the camera moves away from that area. Then he switches back outside again. And you just imagine that Kane would have to be there, but it's just the fact that the camera pulls away, and then when he pulls back and he turns back in, he's still not there. You just
it makes a difference.
You just he must have just been like, it's 87 minutes, mate. Like, I've been up and down all game. I'm not Dabo. I'm done. If I lose the ball, which I might do, we're never getting it back, so I'm not coming any further up the pitch.
I'm right back today.
It's just, obviously, when you watch a game live, you don't get that editorializing of what you can see. It was just a really kind of, he's still not there. That's good. Okay. But I think that kind of was where he was at, wasn't it? Was that he suffered from a startling lack of Daboism that it really is quite difficult to sort of judge him against, because Dabo's so extra that kind of it doesn't help when you're not him, and also you're probably not, Maatsen.
And it makes us though, doesn't it? That's right now it does. That having those two people on the wings in doing what they do with the rest of the formation, that's why we are, a good threat, and that's why we've got we're creating more chances than anybody else in the league because we do have that, the mad dynamism on both wings. And I guess I just feel it when Dabo's not there. I love Dabo.
Imogen, did you want to talk about Maatsen specifically as well?
Yes, although I was going to say that I thought when you said your I follow moment, you were going to talk about when Clive mixed up McFadzean with Clark Salter, which despite the fact that McFadzean was on the floor at the time and play had stopped. Never stopped, Clive.
Oh, okay.
Maatsen, I really like him. I think he's an intelligent player. He picks up some excellent crosses. He's got pace. I think he links up with O'Hare really well. But I feel like I'm in a minority at every game I've been to because he has been not well received by, perhaps it's just chance, the pockets of people that I've been sitting with. I thought he looked tired on Saturday. He wasn't as effective. I don't know whether that's because he was having to do more because Dabo wasn't there. Or maybe he's just volume of matches. But yeah, there were a lot of people around me who seemed to think he wasn't doing anything, that he was being found out a lot, and I didn't think that was the case. And maybe watching it on iPlayer, I follow again, I might change my mind. But I thought he was still offering us the outlet down that side that we obviously weren't getting on the other side. I thought, Robbins perhaps should have taken him off as previously discussed. But I think there's a lot in there that we can be excited about. And I'm looking forward to see how he develops over the course of the next 6 to 8 games. Apparently not everyone is, but we'll see. We'll see how that goes.
I've been impressed. I think that if you remember when we signed Dujon Sterling, do you remember how long it took him? It probably took him 10, 15 games, didn't it, before that kind of Bristol Rovers debacle. But Sterling was actually quite bad for a lot of that period. Not kind of, not just sort of finding his feet. Maatsen hasn't been. I would be delighted if Maatsen played to the level that he's played so far this season throughout the course of the whole season. Like he's to have come straight into this team, having been abroad last season. He's only 19, is he?
Yeah.
Like I think it was a real tough one to kind of hope that we would sign a loan kid that would be good enough to play in the Championship. I think he's more than fine. Like I don't think he's set the world on fire yet. But then he doesn't have. Not every player has to be the best player in the world, do they? He hasn't. I don't think he's done anything wrong yet, has he?
Oh, I didn't think so. And I also, speaking of best player in the world, obviously Hamer was very popular, and I love him as much as the next man, woman, or child. But he had a lot of wayward passes on Saturday, and I think it's Terrace's stuff, isn't it? It's easily overlooked if when you're a talismanic player. Had that been Maatsen, I think it would have been much more quickly jumped upon.
Yeah, I agree. So that's Maatsen, the defence, Kane.
I thought Kyle. I call him Kyle because I like calling him Kyle. But I just thought
it's as good a reason as any, I suppose, isn't it? And it's his name.
Oh no, yeah, literally his name. Also, I'll just pretend I'm mates for the purpose of the podcast. But
I actually think it's less matey than calling him Fads, which is what most people would do at this stage. I think Kyle at least is like. Kyle sounds like you're just calling him. If you saw him across a car park, I think it would be all right to say Kyle, as opposed to Fads, which would sort of suggest that you'd been on his stag do.
Yeah, it would not suit me one bit to call him Fads, or to call anybody Fads for that matter. I'll call him Kyle, because it's his name and he deserves it. So I'm going to call him Kyle. And I thought he was I'm liking him this season, and I've got used to him being who he is right in the middle of the fence, and I have accepted some elements of his game which are flawed, and although they've got better, or his distribution, but I recognise that he will mess up a pass or two, or try his long ball which doesn't work out. But when you've got Gyökeres up front right now, it's probably worth a little punt every now and again, isn't it? But I just thought specifically on Saturday, I thought he led us right through that. I thought he was dominant. He sticks out when you've got two more kind of meticulous defenders around him, like Hyman, Clark-Salter, are fairly classy defenders. He's more of a brute, gets everybody going, and I just thought it was one of his really good games where that's the guy I want to be. And no doubt he'll give away a penalty tomorrow night, and no doubt I'll be angry with him, but I wouldn't mess him up. I wouldn't get rid of him in the team because he brings so much right now, and he's doing a good job. And not to oversell the long ball to the Gyökeres, but it's working as well. So we'll keep that option in our back pocket when it's getting a little bit tight.
And every hero has a flaw, don't they?
Well, of course, yeah.
Yes.
I think he's been, and I know this is going to sound like I'm sort of damning McFadzean with faint praise to a certain extent. I think he's been tremendously helped out by Clark-Salter, and I don't mean that as a dig at McFadzean. Actually, I think it's completely fair that you would have how old is he? 36 or something?
34.
34. Yeah. But even still, is that his best legs are behind him. That's an awful set cliches, but the
go with it.
I'll keep it. Yeah. But actually, is that you can sort of see when you see sort of Clark-Salter's pace next to him, you think, yeah, no wonder you kept giving away penalties, because if you do back yourself into a corner and then there's no one, like you're the one having to also then mop it up, then yeah, you are clumsy and whatever, and you would sort of expect you wouldn't put two wildly attacking, flamboyant midfielders in a midfield pairing, would you? You want everything to click together properly, and it feels like Hyam being on the right side and Clark-Salter next to him on the other, it really brings out the best in him. I think it's the best he's been since he's been at the club. I think probably people will disagree with that, but I think this has been because I think he's been really, really good for us. But the constant thing for me is that I don't think all of the other good things are worth the frequency of errors, specific goal-costing errors that he brings. But he hasn't done that this season, has he? And so actually what he is like a great leader, a great organiser, and a really, really rock-solid, vocal, dominant defensive presence. And you think, well, that's fantastic. If you can do that without conceding 12 penalties a season, then that's, priceless.
Well, you can't ignore the incremental changes that happen in the team. And, I don't claim that Robbins is a genius, but I think you can, and I will happily jump on that ship, because I didn't want to be the first to say it. But, these are smart moves. Nobody says that Rose is a bad player, but you have to look around and just see, how can I improve that back three? How do I make the dynamic of those three work better? And bringing in somebody who can support McFadzean and allow him to flourish even more is really smart. And then Gyökeres up front by himself, and even stuff like Biamu, who I loved, and I thought he actually did really well in the Championship this season. But he had the guts to get rid of him, and you adjust that dynamic slightly, and you make another incremental change in that portion of the pitch. It just rounds us off far more. And we've played, I don't know how many games now, 8 games or whatever it is, and we've been, as far as I'm concerned, superior in all of them. And we're looking very, very strong, and we're looking really well-rounded as a team. And, I think a lot of that is down to just these shifts in quality in different places of the pitch, where now, we've said goodbye to the players who we loved, but maybe didn't quite have that little element of quality that we needed. And we've upped our game in different areas. And why am I so excited about this season? I'm so scared, but also, yeah, we could do something.
I know this is going to sound like I'm going big on this. I can't remember enjoying watching Cov games more than I do at the moment.
Yeah. There's no worry, really, is there?
We're
looking good.
From a neutral perspective, they're gripping, enjoyable games to watch. I think you could argue that there have been spells where we've played better, or possibly that results have been better. But I'm on about just in terms of the actual games themselves. They're fun to watch. There's a lot going on. It's a really interesting team. But I think going back to Robbins it's a couple of things. Does anyone ever watch that documentary that was called Keane versus Vieira?
Yeah.
I mean, if you haven't, stop this podcast immediately and go and find it, because it's a televisual masterpiece, especially if you're as big as Roy Keane fans as me and Neil are. But Roy Keane is asked what Alex Ferguson's greatest strength was, and he said that he was ruthless. And I think Robins has got a bit of that, hasn't he? Where he's just got so little sentiment towards anybody that's ever been
He's realised
in the squad. Yeah, is that kind of as soon as he seems very emotionless in a good way, where kind of you're just like, right, okay, well, I know that Biamu's been a big figure for us, but that he's not good enough now, so he's going and we're replacing him with someone else. And Shipley, who I guess it must be really hard to have Shipley in the squad with this kind of his sort of Mr. Coventry status. And has he even come off the bench yet this season? He must have done, surely, at some point.
Didn't he play at QPR?
I don't even think he's made the bench in a couple of games so far. I just think that takes a bit of something to, like quite a lot of spine. I don't know whether... I remember Chris Coleman, it being talked about that he used to bring players off the bench to make sure that they got their appearance money. You kind of think, well, you've got that the wrong way around, mate. I think that's nice. The other thing is that Robins, to some extent, could be described as a genius, but I think it must also be lovely to be a manager who is even competent, but to be allowed to put the groundwork in to have like a 5-year plan. He's not... That squad that he's got, he's now replacing players that he wanted with players that are better. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? It's rather than thinking I had to sign this loser and now I'm replacing him with someone incrementally better who's still a loser. He's kind of these are all building blocks. Whereas if you're, I mean, again, Chris Coleman, and you've inherited Ian Dowie's 8 left-footed midfielders, you're a good while away from turning that into the squad that you really, really want. And it's a nice luxury for us to have, isn't it? That we've had that managerial stability for as long as we have done, that you can see a really cohesive result of it.
Yeah, and the other people see that as well. I have a tame Millwall fan in my circle of friends. They do exist. And he was convinced that we were going to win. He's like, well, I'm not even going to bother going because we're just going to get torn apart like last time. And I agreed with him, which is disappointing because I did think we would completely outrun them. But it's nice going into a game with that kind of complacency. It's so refreshing. I was thinking a lot about how it was when we were taken into administration, obviously, with all the Derby shenanigans going on. And it feels like another life. And I know that we're not, as a championship club of our status, you're never that far away from royally fucking it up and sliding back down the division. So I'm trying not to let my head run away with me. But it's nice, isn't it? Isn't it nice that we're not fighting for anything other than promotion at the moment? At this moment in time.
Like, in terms of points, like last year. Isn't there a thing where we've got as many points now as we had by Christmas last year or something like that?
Yeah, something like that,
yeah. Something along those lines. But the mad thing is, I wasn't that worried last year. Not at any point. I thought we were playing quite well, even by Christmas, and we'd had like hardly any wins. I thought, we're still playing quite well. We might do it. Like, this is just a different world, isn't it? Like, it's like we've worked on it. We didn't quite get the breaks last year, and we had a really wonky spell early part of the year, and and then we finished it all off. But I just think we've done what we did in that season in League One, where we looked like we could do something, but we've just settled ourselves, and now we're picking up the right bits. And guys, we haven't even Bright in the team yet. The best player in the world hasn't even played. Like, come on, how good we will be when he finally gets fit.
Yeah. There's going to be a game at some point in the season, you'd have to figure just law of averages would mean that it will come to pass, where Bright and Jody Jones will feature in the same attacking lineup, and that is going to be a rattle.
I feel bad for Jody. Where does he fit in any formation that isn't 4-4-2? Where does he fit in?
I think he could have. Well, look, it depends on how up to speed he is fitness wise and his quality levels. But if we did go to playing 1 up front and 2 behind, I'd be more than happy to have a look at him as one of the 2 behind.
He could win a goes, yeah, he could.
Because I think that is kind of a loose brief, isn't it? That's kind of occupy whatever position you want, just have an impact, and I'm here for that. The one thing I will say, touching back on what we said there about Derby and Nottingham Forest, is I sort of think, and the universe has really screwed us on this one. Really, what you want is to save those administrations for a season where we're struggling a bit more. It's going to be a real waste if there's going to be 2 teams deducted 12 points and we're in 4th.
I know.
You think where
They
was
haven't
that?
been playing that badly, Derby, have they? They were sort of mid-table.
They're drawing all their games at the minute.
Yeah.
But I just think
They could. I mean, it's possible they could still get out of it. Maybe.
Yeah, well, I hope so for our sake, and that's really all that matters. Right. Anything more before we move on to preview Borough?
No,
that sounds like a no, doesn't it? Right, Dom. My understanding of Peterborough is that they have no strikers.
Yeah, that looks to be the case. They've got 2 of their 3 strikers injured. So Jack Marriott, who former Derby player, scored a few goals at Championship level, scored a lot of goals for Peterborough when they're in League One. He's injured. Also, their young academy prospect, Ricky J. Jones, injured. And then also, did you say that Jonson Clark-Harris is suspended for 4 games, which
Correct.
is great for us, but also the suspension is kind of a steaming pile of bullshit. I mean, like, I know that there's got to be some disincentive for people to say bad things on social media at some point, but it just feels like, as someone who's sort of grown up in the internet age and might possibly have things that I said when I was 13 brought up against me, like, that doesn't remotely describe me as an adult. I think it's just absolute rubbish banning someone for something they said a few years ago. Give them a fine at worst. It does sort of bring up sort of some sort of dystopic future where some future social network and society points or whatever, you can't get a job because you said something when you were 8 years old, or a Black Mirror episode perhaps. But this episode of Black Mirror for Jonson Clark-Harris, we'll see him in the stands in the Coventry Building Society arena. So
Let's get? I'm
that.
thrilled that you've gone down this avenue, Dom. I really am.
Yeah.
So, I'm really stuck on this one because I'm somewhere in between. I do think there has to be a punitive measure in place. But I think that, like you say, I'm not sure that the ban has any kind of positive outcome to it. Like, I don't know whether he now is not homophobic as a result of a 4-game ban, and I don't know whether I'm not actually also sure. Does anyone know what he's not alleged to, what he has tweeted?
I haven't looked it up.
Well, normally I can find it, but I did have a.
I don't think everybody's going to want to
glance.
quote it either if they do. So like,
but because there's the other thing is the Todd Kane thing, where he's kind of come in under the auspice of being a terrible racist, hasn't he? But then, did we talk about this on a podcast previously, or is this?
No.
So actually, my understanding of what he said is that the ban that he accrued for discriminatory language or whatever it was that someone called him an English C, and so I think Sergi Canos.
Yeah.
And then so he called him a foreign C, which you kind of think, well, it's not right, obviously, but because it wasn't reported anywhere what he'd said, is immediately you kind of leap to the worst outrage, you know what I mean? Like the worst bits of, and then you kind of read that and you go, well, he's not a terrible racist, and we are not as bad as the worst things we say or do, nor as good as the best things, are we? But equally, I just don't think, I think there has to be some sort of measure so that, quite rightly, we are sort of announcing publicly that, I mean, not us, but that the governing authorities are announcing that it's just completely unacceptable. But you wonder whether there could have been something more kind of positive and affirmative.
But are you getting into dangerous territory by saying, oh, well, it wasn't that racist?
Of course,
when you're putting levels of I think
But also,
that strays.
timings is the one that seems to throw more people than anything. Is like, what is your cutoff between when it's relevant and when it's not relevant? Like,
Yeah.
this is where most people seem to get most angry about this kind of thing. Is, if somebody said it 3 years ago, they're probably still thinking those thoughts. Whereas if they're saying it as a teenager, are they just being a teenager and being somebody who's just saying shit because they say shit? Like, this is where it gets really, really complex. And it's where you get into the realms of the in-betweeners, where they are parodying people talking in those terms because that's all you ever heard when you're at school. And that's all I ever heard when I was at school. And I probably said some weird stuff when I was at school as well. And yet, 20 years later, not me. But I guess, that is the complexity, isn't it? It's like, at what point do you punish, and where is that line? And I don't think there's ever going to be a line. So this is where we have this kind of real conflict that everybody has to kind of deal with, and the governing bodies also have to deal with, because let's face it, they have to strike that balance to recognise where something is clearly out there in the public domain, regardless of timescales, and it's wrong. What do you do about it? And that's just an open question. I don't have the answer. That's how it's really complex.
There's another.
Yeah, I think if it's on the pitch, whether it's what Todd Kane said, whether it's what John Terry said, whatever it is, if it's on the pitch, there should be no argument about that. You don't say it, you get a ban, you get a fine. I think that's pretty cut and dried for me. I think it's more difficult on the social media aspect of it. But I think if you introduce degrees when it's on the pitch, no, I think that becomes far too complicated. But that's football's only answer at the moment, isn't it? It's we'll ban someone, we'll fine someone. No one seems to be drilling deeper into the problems that exist both in sport and in, obviously it reflects wider society. I don't know if any of you have watched that Fever Pitch Rise of the Premier League that's been on iPlayer recently. And Les Ferdinand was interviewed and was talking about the taking the knee, and he's saying, well, that was stuff that happened then, that was in the 90s, and we haven't changed anything. I think football still has a lot of educating to do within its ranks, but I don't think it's not willing to do it, and it's really fucking tiring.
The last other kind of grenade that I wanted to chuck in on this, unless anyone else has got anything else to say, is I'm fairly ill-educated, but I spent 3 years working at a social inclusion charity, and when I joined that institution, I would have, if I had to have guessed where kind of society's greatest prejudices lie, you would have gone for the kind of the big ticket stuff of homophobia, sexism, racism, whatever. And my conclusion at the end of the 3 years is that actually the biggest problem that we've got in this country from a prejudice point of view is around class and education. And I think really the lowest rung of what is largely acceptable is that the sort of underclass is completely stamped upon, and that's still we don't even really acknowledge that, and it's a problem. And that this kind of, I think these things come up, and I'm sure that this is terribly complex, so forgive me, but these things come up, and that Johnson Clark Harris in 2013 tweets this stuff. This is a background problem, and I sort of think, whilst we want everyone to be kind of active, positive citizens, we don't all have the same journey in life, do we? And I think that you want everybody to be at the same level, but I think it's foolhardy to expect it irrespective of where people have been and what they've done. I think that I don't think I need to carry that on, but you know what I mean?
But isn't that where the Football Association should come in? They're responsible for, particularly, the higher up you go, players are told everything and what to do, where to go, who to be, how to speak in interviews. Why can't they also be educated in what you're talking about, in racism that they're suffering or are inflicting upon other people, sexism, homophobia, like you say, the class system? Like, why can't the Football Association take some responsibility for that?
But what I'm saying,
Joey.
what I'm saying specifically is I think it's almost unfair to paint Johnson Clark Harris as some sort of terrible villain, because what if he's only ever grown up in a situation where that is just the total norm? How do we expect every single person in that situation to immediately buck the trend and sort of? It's not that easy in life a lot of the time. And
But
so
we're also retrospectively judging and you can't retrospectively educate someone. You could only
Yeah.
start from this point onwards. And, you know, this is something that's happened 10 years ago. And we all recognise that 10 years ago was a very, very different time. And that's obscene to think it, but it really was. And, you know, there can be actions now to educate people now and from this point onwards, and to make sure that I think there is a role for these organisations to play when they look at not just the current professionals, but how that then filters through to society as a whole. Because let's face it, we've got grassroots football all over the place. How do you deal with that level of kind of, you know, education? But I think the real hard element of conflict here is that line. You know, at what point are we saying, where are we going back? Where are we saying, like, somebody could have been educated and recognized that they didn't understand what things were at that point. And I think what people are struggling with right now is, where do you feel comfortable with? Because it's something like, you look at it and you're like, right now in this current context, it makes no sense to me. I can't believe somebody would say that thing. And yet the person has said that thing, and they probably don't mean that thing right now. What's the answer to that? Like, are we focusing our attentions on that, or are we focusing our attention on how people are from this point onwards? Like, it's just such a difficult one to factor in. But I don't want to trivialize this sort of stuff with things that have happened, against just making sure that from this point onwards, we just get better. We all get better.
So that's the attack sorted out. What about the defense? What about the questionable social media presence of their goalkeeper, Dom? Is it anything that?
There is actually something quite interesting about Peterborough's goalkeeper, Chrissy Pym, who's been dropped.
Yeah, doesn't he? Yeah.
Past couple of games, because he said something when they were losing against Reading, and Darren Ferguson came out in the media and said he said something you just don't say, and that's the last. He's banished, to use a Stephen Presleyism. So yeah, it's not a good sign that early in the season, when your manager or the squad seems to be falling out with each other in that manner. It does feel a little bit with Peterborough like we were last season, where we were so confident in League One, and Peterborough got promoted from it last year in a fair degree of style. Scoring a lot of goals with that front line of Clark Harris, Siriki Dembele, and Sammy Smodics. And at the Championship, when you're adapting, you've got to be a little bit more pragmatic at times. And Darren Ferguson, over the past few games, has changed formation quite a lot, and it's been tinkering, trying to find the right formula. They seem to have found it last time out against Birmingham. They won 3-0, and you look at the score on BBC, and it says there's an own goal in the second minute, and there was a penalty just before half time. It didn't really quite convey how convincing that victory really was, where they just repeatedly managed to get behind Birmingham's backline, just countering very quickly and just putting in these very sort of quick low crosses right behind their defence, just to pinpoint the lack of pace, which I imagine is an approach they'll look to adopt here, especially when they're going to be without a recognised centre forward. Imagine they're going to base their game quite a lot on breaking quickly. Dembele, whenever we've seen him play against us, he's absolutely rapid, and he can beat players too. He's going to be a huge danger. I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up playing through the middle, just to give that threat for Posh running in behind. Joe Ward in wide areas, he's the one whipping in those deliveries right behind defences. He can be a thorny customer to deal with if we allow him space to break down the right wing. In midfield, George Grant, who they signed from Lincoln, as a goal-scoring midfielder. Again, someone we've had a few clashes with over the years. Still remember when he scored against us for not counting the playoff semi-final, just that really rubbish hand sign celebration. But yeah, hopefully we won't see that tomorrow night. Jack Taylor in midfield is a very good sort of box-to-box player, can really control things when he's at his best, and he's just back from an injury. And they've got, as you'd expect from Peterborough side, really, they've got quite a few nimble attacking players who really want to have the ball and can be very threatening if you give them the opportunity to. And the question is, do they have the balance in the rest of the side? It doesn't feel like they have a natural defensive midfielder. They've got a few players who can sort of fill in there. That might be an area to target. Also, they've got a very young centre-back duo. They've got Frankie Kent, who's 25. He's been at Colchester a few years. In the past couple of years, he's been at Peterborough and doing quite well for them. He'd typically been playing alongside the experienced Mark Beavers, but Beavers has dropped out the side recently in favour of an 18-year-old called Ronnie Edwards, who has done pretty well the past couple of games, but against Victor Jokeres, you imagine that our Swede is going to give a young centre-back quite a stunning inspection of his credentials. So I think overall it's set up to be potentially quite an annoying game for us, where it's possibly the first time this season where we're quite clearly the favourites for the game, and people are obviously setting up to bloody our noses, really. So it's going to be interesting, against an opponent that is going to specifically set out to negate a lot of what we're trying to do, whereas before we've had almost a bit of a surprise factor about us, or we haven't necessarily had to take the onus to completely control things. The opposition have wanted to do whatever they want to do. So, you would say this has banana skin factor.
Do you know what? You might, right? But I'm going to put some big, brave, big boy pants on, yeah? And I'm going to say, we're going to strap yourself in for some Harlem Globetrotters, 4-5-0, absolute assassination, right?
Oh, I love you, Joey.
Absolute fate-tempting, big call on my part, right? This is, Ben Sheaf is rubbish, Victor Jokeres isn't worth £1 million. We're winning 5-0 tomorrow, right? I am going, this is my Jimmy's lock. What was it on The Simpsons? When you're right 52% of the time, you're wrong 48% of the time. I'm telling you now, remortgage your house, sell your kids, get everything you own on +5 goals, because we're absolutely pulling their pants down. A young back line, no strikers. We're the best team in the league, probably. I'm not having anything other than Jokeres hat trick. Jacob Murphy's going to get 2. It's going to be an absolute party tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, I think it might. Does anyone else?
Yeah, I agree. I like your style.
Does anyone else have that exceptionally misplaced sense of confidence going into tomorrow?
I have that confidence every time I think about Cov. It's great.
I don't. I think it
Plus
might be the first time.
we're at the CBS. It's now excellent. So.
And it's Peterborough, so even if we go 5 goals down, we'll still win.
Yeah, exactly. Come on, guys.
It's fine.
I took the same 2 of my friends from Manchester to both of those 3-2 overhauls, and the second time it was like, what, again?
That was great.
How has this happened twice? World class. Obviously, I never think we're ever going to win. This might be the first time ever that I've gone. I think there was Barnsley at home in 2010, where I thought we were going to win. This might be the only other time I can ever remember thinking, we've got this. And we won that other time, so why would we not win this one?
Are any of you going tomorrow?
I wish.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am.
Are you?
Yeah.
You seem surprised. Is that home?
Do you see?
Yeah, I have a season ticket.
I'm just checking. Oh, I see you there.
Are you going? Are you season ticketed up this season, Imogen?
Oh, every season.
Every season.
Where'd you sit? Oh no, that's personal information on the air. No. I don't give that away because that means I can't talk about the guy who talks about crisps behind me. So, yeah.
Do you think people have got a nickname for you, Neil? Do you think they call you
definitely have, haven't they?
nickname?
They got
guy?
old haggard babyface. That's my name.
Possibly. Right. Any final thoughts before we all go and regret everything that we've talked about in terms of prejudice and everything else like that? That sounds like a no. Let's say, Dom, remind everyone where they can look at previews and transfer talk and all of the other fabulous stuff you do.
It's sidewayssammy.com.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Dom.
All right, cheers.
Thank you, Imogen.
Thank you, Joey.
Thank you, Neil.
Thanks.
And thank you, listener. Bye-bye.